This is You Should Talk To, a podcast for busy marketing leaders who are looking for support and tips on getting shit done. In each episode, Daniel Weiner interviews marketing leaders and discusses their experience, successes, and failures around hiring agencies. If you're interested in finding and choosing the right agency partner, then let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the You Should Talk To podcast. I am your host, Daniel Weiner. This podcast episode is brought to you by myself as well as You Should Talk To, where we pair brands and marketers for free with vetted agencies and or freelancers for marketing and technology needs, because finding great agencies is a pain in the ass. Super excited to be joined by a brand today that I have helped find an agency. Rachel Smith, who is VP of Marketing at SkyZone. Rachel, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Fresh off your dinner trip to Atlanta to another dinner where I also shamelessly and egregiously suck up to marketers, but we had fun though, regardless.
It was a blast. I was kind of hoping like there was going to be some dinner component to this too. I'm just kidding.
It's 11 a.m. I would have sent you like lox on a bagel if I had
I know,
my way,
right?
but
That could have worked.
sorry
Next time.
Next time, yes. Well, cool. Well, since there is no breakfast for us, we'll dive right in with what is a unpopular opinion you have in the marketing world, or a hot take of sorts to kick us off.
Yeah. I think there is like a shift sort of happening as some of these younger generations are aging and becoming more frequent users of products, services. People are having to shift and adapt their content strategies to that. And I feel like there's this resistance in marketing to doing that. So having a little bit more sincerity in content and things like that and less salesy, I feel like everyone says they strive for that, but it doesn't really come through if you look at the majority of like brands' content out there. So for me, I feel like it's time to soften up a lot of the edges around sales content in general, because I do feel like post-COVID, everyone is just so tired of like the pandemonium of things being pushed at them constantly. And I just don't think fellow marketers are really thinking about it that way, because it's a pretty scary departure from really all of the practicing that we've done for most of our careers, like clear, concise, to the message, call to action. So I think like right now we need to sort of reorient everything and have a direction back towards storytelling much more heavily than we've done in the past.
I love it. And I didn't prompt you for this, but I'm curious. I think it's similar to what you just said. I saw this no more apparent than recently where AT&T had issues. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
2 weeks ago, they had big issues. I couldn't make a phone call. There was like some crazy, they said it wasn't a hack, but all this stuff. AT&T was down for like hours. It was like that movie on Netflix. Yeah. I thought the world was ending. And their text message that I got like days later was like devoid of any sort of emotion or humanity. And I would, truthfully, to your point, I would love if a brand like that, I can't imagine how difficult it is to provide like telecom services to the world. Yeah. I would like them to say like, we fucked up. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And I would be a lifelong customer if people spoke to me, to your point, more normal. Like the text I got, I remember reading and was like, who wrote this? What is this nonsense?
Yeah.
They're like, we'll do better. Like, we're going to try.
It was written by some lawyers in that case, and so that's where being a good partner to cross-functional departments in every company is super important. But yeah, I mean, I think like in those cases, just simplifying the message, like what do the customers want to hear? I was without my phone for an entire day. It was a severe inconvenience. It, messed up my hobbies as well, because I wasn't able to wasn't
able to TikTok,
get on Instagram and scroll and look up recipes or whatever. And so it's just very simple. It's like, hey guys, we're so sorry. This was wild. It was a long time. Again, we apologize. And like we've troubleshooted to never let this happen again. And here's how. So like, I think a lot of people don't follow up that message, that apology message, which, there's a lot of cancel culture that has forced apology messages in like recent years. But I don't think people really follow up the apology messages with enough action. So like for me, just don't tell me you figured out how to make it never happen again, unless you're going to tell me how you did that. I think that's the most important piece of what you're telling me. So in that case, like if it wasn't a hack, cool, no problem. If it was, just say, hey, we've upped our security measures and we know now that no one will be able to penetrate this again.
Yeah, just lie to me, you know?
I feel like, honestly, brands do that all the time. I hate to say that.
I agree.
There are some brands that don't, but I think in general, probably there's a perception of we need to like get a message out there instead of doing it kind of like what we're talking about, which is like just be authentic. Like, and not authentic, the buzzword, just be sincere and say, hey, you know, we're really sorry, we fell short, or like acknowledging something like, hey, that was super scary.
Should we start a crisis communication agency?
You know, unfortunately, I've kind of been in that world for a long time,
Okay.
and I'm kind of open, like as my career progresses, like maybe I can kind of get some space from that world.
Okay, that's fair. It's not you, it's me, is what you're saying to that world.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Well, we will talk about your journey here. What a natural segue that was.
Right. I lobbed it up. It was a grand
I was
slam. I'm
gonna
glad you're
say.
going for it.
Yeah. You were a radio host, which I have to hear about. You
Yep.
worked in food and hospitality. You
Yep.
are now at, I think, an awesome and very cool brand, Sky Zone. Tell us a
Yep.
little bit about your journey, and in particular, I'm curious to hear what you've seen change across consumer marketing behavior over like the course of your career. But first, the DJ gig. What
Yeah,
were you?
you
Tell
know,
me
I think
everything.
DJ is not really a fair term to use because
To
I
DJs or
prefer
to you?
both. I prefer on-air talent.
Okay.
That would be my preference because it is a talent to be on air, really kind of having to do things off the cuff. A lot of stuff is happening around you. And in my case, I worked for a few different radio formats. And
Okay.
so, you know, you're queuing up the next song, you're taking calls, and a lot of times that stuff is not really recorded. And so you don't know necessarily what's going to play out with some of it. I've been out of it for a long time, but yeah, so funny story. When I was in high school, I just really wanted to get out of school as much as possible. And there was a vocational school that partnered with my high school. And I figured out that if I did this in the mornings, I wouldn't have to go to school until like 1 p.m. most of the days. And I was like, who would not do this?
Yeah. What a
So I
loophole.
started doing it as a junior, and it turned out to be a good fit. It was something I was naturally like just good at. And so I stuck with it. And it ended up being sort of like this side career that I did through college, and ended up getting my degree in telecommunications and journalism. So it was still, you know, sort of connected in that way. And then, yeah, I kind of just, I think I got to the point where I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to move to Nashville. And everyone thought, oh, she's going to go be in the music industry and all of that, which Nashville is where I still live today. And got here and realized, you know, it's probably not the scene that I was like trying to be a
Sure.
part of. It was very organic. So as I started thinking about it more, it was an easy parlay into marketing and, you know, talking about products and all that stuff. I had kind of already been doing that without really knowing it. So I had a little bit of training there. I do sort of cite that time of my life for my love of brevity, because when you're in news or radio, you really have to be able to say things eloquently, but also in as short time as possible, because obviously time is money in the radio industry.
No, that's awesome. For those who don't know, what is Sky Zone? What's your spiel on Sky Zone?
Well, it's the best place on earth. I mean, I'll start
Totally
there.
agree. There's going to be some parents listening to this that they're going to ask if they can just drop their kids off. So
You cannot just drop your kids off. Let's start there. Yeah, so Sky Zone is a really, really fun, safe place for kids to come. Typically, we serve kids under 12 and get out the wiggles and the energy. We started as a trampoline park. We've evolved to have lots of different attractions since then. But we have very large boxes that you can kind of come in, foster like great activity, get away from screen time, get some, you know, energy bursts out, do a lot of different activities, conquer some fears maybe when you're younger, going down the big slides or the zip line, stuff like that, making some core family memories. That's really what we specialize in. And we have pretty large footprint, over 270 locations across the US. So we have a lot of fun in our world, pun intended. And, you know, jumping is a perk of the job. So I got to say, it's one of my favorite parts, although my favorite attraction is probably the slides.
love it. What's your take on experiences and in-person experience type facilities like yours in a post-COVID world? I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in it, honestly. I think, the growth and demand of our brand is just simply an illustration of how much people crave that in-person connection, but also just physical activity. I mean, if you think back to the like worst times of the pandemic, we were really trying to like figure out ways to just like walk outside. I mean, it was just simple things and pleasures that we probably had taken advantage of our whole lives disappeared overnight. And so I think that now there's maybe a renewed appreciation for physical activity. And it's more important than ever to get kids off of screens because unfortunately that sort of funneled them more towards this virtual environment. And I know a lot of people have untangled a lot of that since, but there's probably going to be a component of it forever now. Not to mention that cell phones, we carry them around in our pockets. We never are without them. It's never, more than 1-2 feet away from us. So I do feel like parents are renewing their focus on physical activity, intentional play, where they're incorporating these fun moments so that children can really be kids. Unfortunately, it's just a mature world out there now. And I think back to whenever I was a kid, you probably have similar, thoughts and memories, but there just wasn't the same pressure when we were kids. I mean, my parents were like, go outside. If you want to be inside, you have to read a book. And so I pretty much was always picking outside. And basically it was just like, have fun, don't worry. It was just a different time. And so, I think Sky Zone is that safe place that people can bring their kids and sort of meet other parents who are in that same stage of life, which I've realized also post-COVID is a huge need for a community. I mean, understanding how you can meet other people in the same stage of life is really hard today. And being able to just be in the same place at the same time, your kids are enjoying the same things and maybe even making friends. Now you all of a sudden have found a community as well that was like a dual purpose visit.
Rachel, you're gonna make me cry. That was
I
was an
know, right?
emotional pitch for Scott. All right, I'll go.
Come on. Like, people have heard me say this, but for all the things that we do, I think that the laughter component is really downplayed. So if you're an adult and you go to Sky Zone, you're welcome, by the way, to come. You get on a trampoline, you start jumping. There is no way that you can keep from smiling and laughing because it's funny. Adults don't do anything like that in their everyday lives. Life is so serious now that you get on a trampoline and you start jumping and endorphins immediately are hitting you because it's so unlike anything else we do.
I like it. Yeah, when I think back to childhood, yeah, it was get home, have a snack, and go
Yep.
outside until my mom yelled at me to come in for dinner,
Yep.
essentially.
Yeah.
Also, like being bored, I mean, I feel it myself, it's depressing. Like when I'm bored, I'm like, oh, look at my phone. When you were bored back then, you were just bored.
Yes. Or
You didn't necessarily have to do
found
something.
something tactile to do. I mean, like for us, we built forts in the living room. I would build an obstacle course in our backyard for my sisters to, do and race. And like, we were helping our parents with like yard projects. And you just had a lot more like tactile physical things that you were doing that now maybe are phased out or less prioritized. Because to your point, like it's just an easy crutch to grab the cell phone and begin to scroll.
I know, I hate it.
Same. I've definitely moved my social apps to like 2 layers deep in some folders. So it's a deterrent for me to not just easily click it and open it.
It's like when they have the special feeders for dogs who eat too fast. You're like, I gave myself.
I need that.
You did that for the apps on your phone? You have a snuffle pad for your apps? Oh my
That's
goodness.
me. Yeah, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
What a Taylor Swift reference.
Yep.
We love that. Maybe she'd like to sponsor this podcast. This is another good segue. I like to ask everybody, what is your advice for marketing leaders out there in 2024? Don't give them the app advice, but I'm curious. I talked to a ton of CMOs and VPs, and I think everybody thought 2024 was like going to maybe start off a little rosier than it has. I still see a weird job market and like some, I don't know, just weirdness in general, I guess I would say, or uncertainty. What's your advice for other marketing leaders out there about how to ideally thrive, but for others, how to survive in 2024 and beyond?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it comes back to leadership style. If you kind of sort of zoom back and you think about the consumer, you can't help but think about your team is also part of that. A lot of times the folks on your team are bought into your brand. So it's a really easy barometer to check in with them on like what's going on in their lives. So, I mean, I think it's time for us to sort of step back again and like look at our teams and really sort of think about how can we best serve them? Because when you reduce the friction in an environment for a top performer, all they are able to do is work even better, more efficiently, more happy. And when people are happy, they do amazing work. They're able to innovate. When people are in survive mode culturally, they just simply can't. It's not available to them to access that creativity. So, like for me, I think the reason why we've struggled with creativity post-COVID is people have just been in survive mode, man. Like I even feel it. Like it's like every day, I have this long list of things I've got to work through, and then I have to sit there and come up with something that's creative, exciting, engaging. And day after day after day, that can really wear on you if you aren't finding these ways to create real connection and foster things that will create intimacy on your teams. So, I mean, it's less about the macro environment, and it's, I think, more about what's going on inside of your team, inside of your company culturally. Those things are very important.
Do you have any specific tips for folks trying to foster that in a virtual world? Even if your team has an office, most folks who have that are still distributed. Do you have, again, like I still see people saying like, oh, like I'm trying to do like a virtual wine event. I don't know if people like, I'm a solopreneur. Well, I'm curious if people still want that stuff or if they're over it. So I'm curious if you, not to put you on the spot, but if you have one actual tactical thing for people to do with their teams to foster that doesn't come off as, BS essentially.
Yeah. Honestly, so my team is fully remote. I have people on coast and coast. So it's a little bit of like a dance that you do all the time because the time zones are so different. So like a wine event, like the East Coast team would be doing this like well into dinner if we did it as like a happy hour for the West Coast.
You can't just have people drinking all day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. How are we going to get through this together? But yeah, for me, I focus more on like connecting the people. And I think to be able to connect to someone, you have to know things about them. So for me, I actually facilitated something that was called Hi Hello. It was very lighthearted. I just built this little template.
Trademark that name.
I should, right? And basically people just followed this template where they told things about themselves that probably wouldn't organically come out. And it wasn't like weird, deep, dark secrets or anything, but it was just sort of like, can we see some pictures of someone, of the people who matter most in your life? What recipe are you excited about right now?
No one was let go after this exercise.
No one was let go.
Whoa, don't share that.
You're like, whoa, that's not,
that is not what we were hoping you shared.
Right. And I did not review anyone's presentation. But now that you're saying that, I definitely could see how that could have went wrong. But yeah, so I mean, I think like it's probably going to feel cliche coming from me because like what we do is literally create play and fun, but finding ways to be silly and have fun are so important. Yeah. I think that, again, we've just really lost our like focus on how can we play. As adults, we just lose that ability because we get so serious about our careers and we have kids and we buy homes and like all of a sudden the stress is just mounting and we're really not finding that outlet for play anymore. So that's why I'm a huge fan of Sky Zone, and it was a really easy transition for me to make to, be a part of a brand that literally fun and play are at the core of everything that we do. And so for me, I was like, how can we live the brand? How can we be more tied to our mission? We can't say we're living the brand if we aren't finding organic ways that are playful in our everyday life. So I have a scheduled time every single week where we spend about 45 minutes to an hour, and we do presentations like this to keep the team connected. And so many people reached out afterwards and were like, oh my gosh, I've known so-and-so for so long, and I've never actually really known any of that stuff that she shared. And so I think that the more you can do that, you foster that connectivity.
Love it. We love a tactical tip here on the podcast. We'll get to my favorite question of the entire podcast. You have the elusive VP title where everybody assumes you have trillions of dollars to just dole out, that you just have a pile of cash on your desk to give to agencies and vendors.
I had to move it out of the way for us.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that would have been weird. I moved my cash pile away as well. I find folks with your title are getting hit up billion times a week. I'm curious, is that the case for you, getting hit up every 12 seconds across every device and network?
Yeah, I would say it happens I still can't figure out how everyone gets my email. This is probably like a very simple answer, but for whatever reason,
I've been selling it for
oh, well, that's good.
small
Thank you.
size.
Hopefully, you've been making a good fortune off of it.
That's the cash pile.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. It's all coming together for me now. Yeah. So, I mean, I get a lot of sales emails, and, I would say the most frustrating place to get this stuff is LinkedIn. A friend of mine is in sales, and she's like, this is the only place we have to contact people. I'm like, no, it is not. Like, you're reaching out to me. You're assuming I'm interested in your products. And like, I'm just trying to get on here and like get best practices for marketing, see what great brands are doing. I'm trying to garn like, employee knowledge on how can we do better, like activities for our teams, those types of things. And like, I have, however many people in purgatory on my LinkedIn, because I'm just like, I can't move forward because you're hard pitching me on something. And if I approve you, then you're going to think I'm okay with this. And if I deny you, then it's like this extreme piece. So it's just this purgatory on LinkedIn.
What's your PSA to agencies and vendors out there who are interested, which is probably all of them, in working with you at some point? What would you say to them?
Find a connection. I mean, I hate to do like a plug for your business, but like find a connection that can.
You hate to plug my business? Why not, Rachel? That's what we're here for. Shameless and egregious.
As if you need my help.
I need everyone.
I saw the marketing dinner. I know how, successful you are at this point.
Thanks.
But yeah, I mean, find a connection to tee up the intro. It goes a long way when someone can say that they vouch for you, for your business, for your product, or just you as a human. I mean, I really value when someone's like, hey, I'd love to get coffee, learn more about your career or whatever. And not just like, hey, I want to tell you about this product that I have that I think you really need. And I'm like, you don't even know me, so how do you know if I need it or not? And I will tell you one little pet peeve. I love it when someone sends me a message and says, I looked at your website performance, and I can see where you guys need a lot of help in X, Y, and Z.
They're calling your baby ugly.
Thank you very much. It's definitely not going to get me to contact you back, but thank you for letting me know you think our website sucks. Goodbye.
Yeah, I think the PSAs I give to not only all agencies, but my agencies out there, ones I work with, ones I do not, is to chill the fuck out. If I'm giving them the honest thing, because I think so many do long-term detriment to themselves, personally and for their agencies and vendors, by trying to force short-term connection, right? Like, people also just don't take no.
Well, right. Like, that is also a thing. Like because I've been in marketing and sales like my whole career, I am usually very gracious in those moments because I know what it feels like to have to do like a cold call or something like that. And so I try to just be very kind and be like, hey, thank you so much. We're not interested. And honestly, we'll reach out if something changes. When people are graceful in that moment, I legitimately will save their email and I will search it later if something comes up. If people keep pushing and pushing and pushing, I block their messages from my email account. And, so now they've lost touch with me forever. Yeah. And I think that's just, there is a fine line of trying to be like, connect and like trying very hard to tell your brand story and then going too far on not knowing like how to read the room. And that's a skill that's really important in this industry.
It's also like human nature too. You don't necessarily remember all of your good experiences, but you 100,000,000% remember the bad experiences and the negative experience with salespeople stalking you. And I'm guessing most people listening to this could name 10 monsters who they have no desire to talk to ever again in their lives.
Yes, I totally agree.
Well, with that said, can you think of a really positive, or actually you want to do positive or negative agency experience first?
I like to stay more in abundance in the positive life.
So we'll start with negative and finish with positive, or we got to do both?
All right.
We'll do negative first. We'll finish on a positive note.
Okay.
What is a negative agency experience you have had, and what's made it negative?
I think so. There's a lot to agency life, right? And agencies do have it hard. Like I think that it's a hard space to operate in because there's lots of things fluctuating. Talent is, sort of this like ambiguous thing that you're constantly trying to manage and tweak. And a lot of that stuff is driven by the accounts that you have and that sort of thing. And, I feel like one that really comes to mind was like an example of where something went wrong with a project, and it required an adjustment of the budget. And instead of them reaching out and saying, we totally screwed this up, we are so sorry, we will pay for this, they reached out and said, hey, we actually need more budget to finish the campaign that you asked us to do. And I was so taken back because like it's in my first nature, if something goes wrong under my watch, even if I wasn't the person who did it, to apologize profusely. And it's not because it's inauthentic, but it's just the right thing to do. And so that was, I kind of had to get in lockstep again with them and sort of be like, hey, y'all kind of really wanted an apology first. Also was a little shocked that you asked for money when it was like on you.
Did they call or this was all over email?
It was via email. So, again, I think that's a tough situation. Now it was like it was in a tight timeline. It was like a Friday night. And so maybe there was some thought there of like, I don't want to interrupt the day or the evening, the weekend. But yeah, I mean, I think the way that you overcome that stuff is just like high levels of communication, always trying to make sure you're staying in lockstep really tight. And then also just making sure that when something goes wrong, your team, meaning the agency team, is empowered to do whatever it takes to make it right. Like, just do it already without having to go levels of approval and all of those things. It should be your first instinct. How can I make this right? Because again, like as marketers, that's what we do. If someone sends us a review and says, I absolutely hated Sky Zone, it was the worst experience of my life, and here is why. The first thing we're going to do is apologize. The second thing we're going to do is try to recover the guest. Like, we fell short. We need to get you back in. We need to like show you can have the time of your life at Sky Zone. Here's how we're going to do that. And so I think agencies who don't take that same mentality but work with consumer-facing brands especially, like that's a huge miss.
I agree. And it probably all could, even though it was a Friday night, which I'll give grace for that.
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone.
Agreed.
Always get solved in like I talk about this like every 12 seconds. I feel this is like my shtick now on LinkedIn, but I get, I sit between agencies and brands. I hear about past bad experiences or current misses and things like that. My first question is always like, did everybody just pick up the phone? And everybody's like, no, we're like emailing on like a 17 email thread at the moment. I'm like, they're like, you think? And then like 98% of the time after, they're like, yeah, we talked for like 45 seconds. And now we're totally aligned and we are totally cool. I'm like, shocking. Like, who gave, like, what great advice?
I know. I feel like I'm like grandmother time, but I have this hard rule where I'm like, if we go back and forth 3 times on an email and we aren't like getting it to its resolution, we've got to talk on the phone and schedule a call or whatever, because we're not getting it done. And this is eating up a lot of productivity that I had allocated to something else.
People think I'm weird for picking up the phone.
No.
I get all the time, like, you like to talk a lot. I'm like, well, if you wrote a better email, I wouldn't have to call you. Like,
I also do think that we are going to be rescued a little bit by some of these younger generations because they enjoy talking on the phone.
Do they? I thought younger people just text.
Come on. Now you sound like grandfather time.
I am grandfather time.
I mean, honestly, like if you're not seeing what some of the alpha generation, like the one that's younger than the Zennials, they have this deep desire for connectivity.
Really?
They really, it's starting to be
new every day.
This shift. And so I do think that them and Zennials both are craving more of that, because if you think about the time frame that they were born and like have been raised in, it's like a very tech heavy world. So they crave like this vintage nostalgia that probably we've taken for granted growing up, in all of our lives.
The only thing I know, not to give you, since you didn't want to plug my business, not to plug yours, my niece and nephew who are 4 and 2.
Don't let them know that you don't know their ages.
It's cool. They don't listen to this. They love like 3 things. It's Moana, it's Frozen, and it's Sky Zone. When kids have birthday parties there. So, and those are the only things they
love those 3 things.
It's what?
It's kind of hard not to love those three things.
I could recite. I'm more of a Moana than Frozen guy, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, we don't want to mince things here.
Yeah, no, your negative wasn't even that negative. That's the most common thing I hear, truthfully. Like it's so funny too, because I talk to people all the time. I think people have a conception of my business. They're like, oh, Danny's agencies are like perfect angels and like they never mess up and nothing can ever go wrong. Like if Danny has, vetted, I'm like, no. It's more like I would like to think close to 100% of my agencies are really good at making stuff right if stuff goes wrong. Like nobody seeks out something going wrong, Of course, but like any agency who tells me like, oh, it's been a perfect relationship with a brand, like I call them a liar. Like something always happens. The goal is for it to not happen a lot. And,
totally.
The longer you work together, they happen like never, hopefully. But yeah, it's how you react to it.
Well, and I think like it's unrealistic to think things will not ever go wrong. I mean, think about like your closest friendships. You get in arguments and tiffs and things like people don't always see eye to eye. So like you should plan for those scenarios. And I think, again, I hate to redirect back to culture, but this is a cultural staple to say, hey, just so you know, we always empower people to do what it takes to make it right when we fall short. And this was a concept that I read in a book maybe 5-10 years ago. It's called Setting the Table by Daniel Weiner. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it.
Shout out Danny Meyer. He should sponsor this podcast too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm pulling them all in for you here.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, so the book is quite old now, but all the concepts still really stand, and it's really about how to create like a hospitable environment. And so it transcends restaurants. Obviously, he's a restaurant mogul at this point, but it transcends really just selling food, and it's about more environmental things. And I think that the more that you build into your culture, hey, we are like a team that is empowered. That continues to transcend every single experience when leadership, or whatever you want to call it, isn't present to correct it in the moment. You don't need a manager to correct things if your server is fully capable of making it right for you and knows that in the moment, has that confidence to say, you know what, I am so sorry. I know that your food is running behind, but we went ahead and the chef sent something out for you guys to nibble on so that you aren't starving to death by the time your food gets here. Like, thank you for thinking of me and thinking of my hunger, because that's actually what brought me here to your establishment.
Love it. That is why I think if I had to pick, like every role is important, but at an agency, I think agencies undervalue the importance of like account people.
Yeah, I will say that there are some amazing ones out there, and those ones are all over the details. That is a sense of relief to me, because I'm a big details person also. And if I feel like something is going to get missed, there's a high level of anxiety for me. So when I know someone's got it, they're all over it, they're all over the details all the time, it's a huge relief for me.
Yeah, you just want to know somebody has your back. Like,
yes,
they're going to figure it out. All that sort of stuff. Well, let's talk about a positive agency experience you've had and what made it so delightful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that agencies that just embrace the gray area are really enjoyable to work with. So obviously, like throughout lots of different projects and careers, or career path, you find all of these different things you're working on. And inevitably, what it always boils down to is alignment. So getting alignment is kind of hard at times. And I really appreciate, I had an agency that I worked with that just sort of embraced that their first pass at this project really wasn't what I was looking for. And most of the time that we spent evaluating that body of work that they were showing me, I was saying, I don't like this because of this. I don't like this because of that. And we were kind of going through it, and not in a mean way, but just sort of trying to explain like where we're not on the same page. And they were extremely gracious during that, but also they found that as like a successful point of our relationship, because they were getting to know more what we were looking for in the project. And I think that when you see things like that, that's so rare that someone can say, oh man, you didn't like what we brought, but we have a clearer picture of what you want. And now we feel even more connected to you because of that. Those are like grand slams from an agency perspective, because that shows that even in disagreement, it's not personal. We're just trying to put out a good piece of work. Where I do think sometimes, and myself included, when you're a creative and you've spent so much time on this concept, and then to use your phrase, someone calls your baby ugly, you're like, dude, I've spent like 30 hours putting this together and now you're just saying you hate it. I feel like being able to sort of find that fine line of knowing like it isn't personal, even though for creatives, it oftentimes feels personal.
Yeah, but they can also like this is going to sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. Like you can just talk shit behind like after the call. Like
You
complain
could.
and stuff on the call. Like you should take that mentality even if you kind of sort of disagree because you're so close to it, which I would argue shouldn't. Like you have to. It's funny that you bring that up with creative. I had somebody recently ask me, how do I evaluate creative agencies or creative in general? And I joke that I don't, because like, who am I to judge good creative? I can tell you what I like, but that's a whole other podcast. What I did say though, is I think brands, when hiring agencies, should hire the agency that they think can get there.
Yeah.
Because they look at work and they'll be like, oh, we like that. But they never ask the follow-up question, like, how did you get there with that brand? And for all they know, it took 10 iterations and 6 months of stuff to arrive at that thing. I rarely see, at least my experience with creative agencies, while being at a creative agency and also working with them now, like the very first thing brands are like, oh my God, that is exactly it. It's like close, or like, oh, we like it for this. The best agencies and who you should seek out are the ones that go, great, based on your feedback, here it is. And like the second or third try is you going, yeah, that's exactly it. But you hire for the thinking to get there versus like picking out pretty things that you like, I think.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I think if you're a good marketer, you're sort of using other brands as a barometer of like work that you appreciate and that you like, but you're obviously not going to like rip it off. So you really don't have a lot of things that you can use in those scenarios to like hit a perfect like target and a bullseye. It's more of like, we're just trying to get in the same line of thinking, and then also letting the creative agency do the thing that you hired them to do. You brought in a creative agency because you were lacking creativity. And so letting them sort of lead that, I think that's sort of that dance that you have to learn to do as an agency, and then also, as someone hiring an agency. Because otherwise it's a waste of their time, your time, and also resources on both sides.
Well, what are you most excited about in the marketing space these days?
I feel like this is so overplayed, but I am very excited.
You're going to say AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
I'm a psychic.
I know, you're a psychic.
Well, that's how everybody answers it these days. If I know they're going to say it, they're like, oh, I don't want to be like cliche or say what everybody else says.
Yeah. What if I would have said like something weird, like,
I just want somebody to say like billboards and freak me out. They're like,
I was gonna say Meta,
print ads and trade journals.
Yes. No, honestly, I think that any good marketer who's paying attention to what's happening sees the potential in AI. I mean, for marketers for a long time, honestly, we've had to be thinking about straddling the line of ethics, like for business and like the data that we have and being good stewards of that stuff. And like, how do we create and honor creative people in the process? And then how do we balance technology with that? I feel like AI gives us a whole other workflow opportunity that marketers can really create efficiencies inside of. If you look at lots of industries, from like the left brain and the right brain, the ops, and then the marketing, what you end up sort of seeing is that operations has worked really hard to create efficiencies in their workflows. I mean, Six Sigma, stuff like that's existed for a very long time. And finding ways to create efficiencies in operations is how you a lot of times drive profitability and revenue. Well, that hasn't really been adopted in the creative space until I think AI came along and sort of said, we can automate some of these things and a lot of that. But I think also too, just thinking about manpower and the squeeze that every business in general is feeling, to your point about the economy, and there's some, just some weird feelings out there right now. And AI gives you sort of like this ability to sort of clean up what your workflow could look like and at least give you a starting point. Obviously, very important to make sure you're still making anything you do with AI your own and an original piece of work. But I do feel like it sort of takes the burden off of just getting that like match started to essentially build your flame.
Building your flame. Maybe I'll name the episode that.
Look at that.
What keeps you up at night or stresses you out from a marketing standpoint or business standpoint in general?
There's a couple of things. Obviously, I think marketing, the team as a whole is responsible for a few things, like building the brand and protecting the brand's reputation. And those two things have changed so much over the last few years. I think, the beginning of TikTok changed a lot of stuff. Even Instagram had to change their whole platform to compete with TikTok, and you still see that playing out today.
I'll die if TikTok goes away. I own it. I get everything. I get my news. I get pop culture. I'm as well informed as I can be, and my algorithm is perfect.
I'm sure, yeah, and super well informed, because it's not serving up the things that they know you only will like, and not serving you any.
It's perfect. Leave my TikTok alone.
Yeah, no, I feel similar about my my Instagram feed.
Ignorance is bliss. I get cooking, puppies. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I will say that to that point, that is what keeps me up at night. There is
scrolling TikTok.
There is this very tough space that we're in right now, and I think like as a country, there's a lot of like healing that still needs to be done, and like togetherness that still needs to be fostered. And unfortunately, I just don't see that on the horizon at all. And I do think that social channels drive that divide deeper and deeper and deeper. There's obviously a lot of conversations out there about the influence of these platforms, particularly for young people who really don't have the ability yet to decipher between what is like, basically lobbying for me to think this way, and then what is factual. And then obviously there's tons of questions around factual things in general. And so I feel like, for me, it's making sure we're navigating all of the unique things that are happening in today's world. I mean, I remember when Facebook for Business began, and that was sort of like this transition for us, that we were sort of like, whoa, we got to have like business pages. We can't just have like the page for the restaurant. And now that seems like a distant memory to every single thing is recorded on a phone. It's posted somewhere. There's an engagement and viral factor to every single post now. And then there's really sort of like this stunt publicity angle that just didn't exist before TikTok. I mean, people do these like weird stunts to try to like get views. And a lot of times they can be very like, bombastic or disruptive in nature. So, I mean, those are the types of things that keep me up at night. Crisis comm reports into my department, and it's something that I've had my hand in for a long time in every role. And so that has changed a ton as well. And I think that we're in a weird space. Hopefully it's a gray area that's about to end, where there's just sort of this attention grab happening. People are doing things on these social platforms, and unfortunately the platforms right now are tolerating it. So I think long-term, more like awareness around this type of stuff maybe could like put a kibosh on content like that, and that would hopefully change behavior, but it's still up in the air and really obviously a hot topic. So I don't see relief on the horizon.
You don't see sleeping better anytime soon?
Probably not, honestly.
There was a ton of
sleep anyway.
This is being recorded on April 2nd, yesterday being April Fool's Day. And there were so many things that I read yesterday or saw that I was like, I'm pretty sure this is April Fool's, but like the world's weird right now. So like this could totally be real. And I had to like check.
Yeah.
Every day feels like April Fool's Day.
I have to say, the last 3 years have felt like one big April Fool's Day. I saw some meme that said, like, hey, no jokers out there. April Fool's is like canceled this year because we've had too many April Fool's in a row for like 3 years. And I completely agree. I was like not here for like people who are trying to be jokey, although I did have one favorite that was out there. And it was mostly because the comments section was so hilarious. I don't know if you saw the mashup post between Sonic and Moe's. They like said they were going to make a queso slush, and the comments were hysterical. People wanted that. Like there was so many people like, I was so excited until I realized it's April 1st,
some of
which
the
I
best
appreciated.
Ideas come out of ridiculousness.
I know, right? I don't think I would be into it, even though I love the queso and I absolutely love the slushies at Sonic. But, I could see people giving it a try, and many of them in the comments section were saying like, I would totally try this.
That sounds interesting. I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah. Gotta try everything once.
Yeah, for sure. But we will finish with a couple fun ones. We'll rapid fire. What was your very first job? Before your on-air talent.
I was going to say my very first job was the radio
station. Oh, it was? Okay.
Yep. But yeah, I worked at Arby's. That was my first job. That wasn't school driven.
Gotcha.
So
doing what?
Fast food, everything. I
Everything.
mean, I was literally like a Jill of all trades. Like, could do the register, drive through, slicing beef, running the fryer. Like, I had it all. Most of that was driven because like it was like a 25-cent raise to get certified on like the other like stations. I worked there with my best friend at the time in high school.
I bet it was the most fun you ever had.
Honestly, I think of it so fondly. I'm still a huge fan today of Arby's, probably because of that.
I delivered mattresses in college.
Were you really strong back then?
Or am I not? No, Rachel. This is my own pot. You're throwing shade on my own podcast. I'm as strong and virile as I was then. Now,
that's great.
We had a box truck with no air conditioning. It was like 150 degrees in Clemson over the summer. It was humid. It was disgusting. We made like $100, and I felt rich, and it was like the most fun I've ever had.
Was it cash?
Yeah, we worked on. I think we made like $10 an hour or $10 per delivery.
Cash? Were you like, I am so?
I'm not kidding. We would make like $100 a day over the summer or something like that, and yeah, we were rich. I was like, oh my god, I can retire. Like, I don't have to work ever again.
Yeah,
it was amazing. What would your final meal be? I'm interested in.
Man, like meals have changed so much for me recently because I've sort of been on this health kick.
Me too. That's why when you said the queso slushy, I was like, it's a little close to pool season for me. So
good point. I hadn't really thought about that. And the chips, I just can't get stopped, honestly, once they get going. Honestly, I feel like
if calories didn't matter, what's your final meal?
Okay, yeah, because like no going to the pool if it's your final meal.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you're gonna be shocked when I say this, so just.
Okay. Should I close my eye?
Yeah. I am a huge Marco's Pizza fan.
Okay.
I absolutely.
Everybody has their nostalgic pizza brand.
You know what's weird? It's not even nostalgia for me. I have no excuse.
I don't know if I've ever had Marco's, if I'm being honest here. Yeah.
Okay. Pepperoni Magnifico, you have to have.
Are they Detroit's though?
No. I don't think
Thin crust? What's Marco's shtick?
Just delicious amazingness.
Marco's needs a new agency because I don't know anything about them.
I mean, seriously, it is so great. I didn't try it until probably like 7 months ago-ish, where my husband like convinced me to try it. And I'm like, I don't like fast food pizza, no. And I am a big pizza person. And probably like before I had Marco's, my number one thing that no one outside of the Midwest would know would be Pizza King. It's a regional chain that's just in the Midwest and primarily in Indiana, which is where I'm from. But because I obviously can't go to Indiana every day to get pizza, I've had to find other avenues.
Right.
And I recently stumbled across Marco's. Huge fan. Definitely recommend. It would probably be like my comfort food if it was my last meal.
Okay, totally fair. Dipped in ranch?
I've kind of moved away from the ranch. I think that's because here's the reason.
That's the
ranch thing out because I said Indiana and Midwest. Like, was that where that came from? Were you profiling me?
No, because I love ranch on pizza, and the best pizza in Atlanta is in a place connected to my building called Glide, and they make their own ranch.
I
maybe the best ranch in the country.
Homemade ranch.
They started bottling it. I'm going to send you a bottle of ranch.
Okay. I do ask when I'm at a restaurant if I get a side of ranch for anything, not just pizza. Like, do y'all make it in-house or is it like store-bought? And if they say store-bought, I'm like, I'll just take like mustard or something else. But yeah, no, I actually, last plug, I'm not getting paid for this at all. But the Pepperoni Magnifico has so many pepperonis on it. That's
such a good name.
Need ranch.
Pepperoni. It has. I'm not sure if I get the connection. It has so many pepperonis you don't need ranch.
That should be their new slogan.
I don't even know what that means. I'd be so confused. I go buy a pizza.
Exactly.
We have so many pepperonis. You don't even need ranch.
I need to see this.
Pepperoni Magnifico. Okay.
I mean, if it blows up, then hopefully they give me a buzz and like tell me.
I'm gonna ask for an influencer deal after this to them. I'm like, you have no idea what just occurred on my podcast. They're like, how many people listen? I'm like, 12. I want a ton of money.
Yep. I hope that you get another stack of money for this.
I hope so too. My final question for you. I thought it was going to be a little more elaborate after our conversation about food, but neither here nor there.
I'm a simple gal at heart.
Love it. Who is somebody who inspires you personally, professionally, or both?
Man, there's so many people out there that sort of pour into my everyday life that I think things, keep moving because of them. And inspirational wise, like career wise, I'm very, very inspired by my current boss at Sky Zone. He's had a great career, and I think that he has a lot of like background to lend to how he approaches things. He has spent the majority of like his angle in the digital space, so he's very knowledgeable at that. But in all honesty, I think like him and his like aura, I really appreciate, because I am, as you know very well, because we're friends at this point, I think. I have a very like
I can confirm.
I can confirm and not deny.
Yeah. No, we're business associates.
Associates.
Yeah.
Colleagues.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little bit hurt, but that's okay. I'm going to move on.
I said friends. I can't believe you even questioned that.
Well, anyway.
I sent you a TikTok of Sky Zone.
True. And I actually did enjoy it.
It was good, right?
It was pretty wacky, but I
don't even know if it I don't even know if I understand everything.
I don't even know how that came up in your algorithm. I'm very curious to discuss that on our next time together. But yeah, so I have a very like fiery personality, very ambitious, and just have a lot of passion and things like that. And I appreciate that my current boss is like sort of like that even keeled approach, and he sort of encourages me to have pause, which I appreciate. And I like to think that I encourage him to like be a little fierier. So it's a nice like balance, but probably also have to give a shout out also to my husband, because I'm out here like chasing dreams all the time. And he also has like a great career, but he sort of keeps the house like flowing and moving. And in general, he runs point on almost everything on the home front. So while I probably oversee like the calendar, the social events, the appointments, that sort of stuff, I think it takes, two people to make this sort of lifestyle work, and particularly in marketing where it's an always on industry. So those are my two.
Love it. We will wrap up now. Is there anything you'd like to plug for Sky Zone? Any new stuff? Anything cool people should check out? They should totally visit the website. What do you want to pump here?
Honestly, anybody who's having a birthday, it's like kind of that season right now, or a celebration of any kind. I mean, that's what we specialize in. We have all the things that you could possibly need to have a birthday party. And we do all the work. So you just essentially say, yeah, this is the birthday party I want. I want however many pizzas and however many drinks. And then we take care of the rest. And so I feel like that's probably one of the best kept secrets at Sky Zone, that people, they obviously think like, come bring your kids, bounce off of the trampolines, do the slides, that sort of thing. But probably not everyone has really experienced the magic of our birthday parties, particularly, moms who are out there trying to balance like a heavy workload and a busy lifestyle. I feel like that's one of the things that we can always be there for. So I highly recommend that. You obviously can find it on our website. If you couldn't, then I would probably need to be fired. But you honestly can access it from any point. So social media, all of that stuff as well.
Love it. And if you want to check out Rachel, you can check her out on LinkedIn, but don't sell her anything.
That's right. If you do, then I'm going to screenshot it and send it to Danny, and he's putting it on the next podcast.
And I'm going to turn it into a LinkedIn post. So you definitely don't want that. Thank you very much for joining, Rachel. This was awesome. And yeah, we will chat with you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for checking out this episode of You Should Talk To. This show is brought to you by the company with the same name, You Should Talk To, a company that helps marketing leaders find the right agency or freelancer for their situation. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow You Should Talk To wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit youshouldtalkto.com for more information.